The Minnesota Vikings master plan has been revealed for the offseason, with a huge ESPN article and other outlets dropping scary nuggets that's sure to ignite an explosive offseason ahead, with the team expecting to make many moves on the horizon. We're going to break down all of that in this episode of Vikings Digest, but first, we have a really cool offer that we want to let you guys know about before we get into the video. Before we get into all the news today, this video is brought to you by Kalshi. When you download Kalshi using the link below and enter code DIGESTNFL, you'll get $20 when you trade your first $100. Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the US, and on their platform, you can trade yes or no on real life events like sports, elections, news, and pretty much everything. And whether you're in California, Texas, or anywhere else across the country, Kalshi is also live in all 50 states. For sports fans, trade on game outcomes, playoff chances, or player performances, all in a regulated market where you can cash out anytime. For football fans, you can also trade on the NFL playoffs, and the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Buffalo Bills is at a 50-50 split right now. Me personally, I'm siding with the Buffalo Bills, but whoever wins this game, I could see definitely going all the way to the Super Bowl. But Kalshi is a genuinely smarter way to use your sports or news knowledge, and you can close positions whenever you want. Download Kalshi in the link in the description, and don't forget to use the code DIGESTNFL to get your $20 bonus, and thank you to Kalshi for sponsoring this video. And with that, let's hop right into it, which is the Vikings master plan has been revealed. As per ESPN, as they put out an article covering all 32 teams, and we're obviously going to be covering the Vikings here today, with their 2025 record being 9-8 and their football power index being at number 27, which is down near the bottom, of course, and their cap space for 2026 being at a minus 58.1 million, which is absolutely not where you want to be. Almost dead last in the NFL, with Kansas City, I think, being absolutely last. But Minnesota is not too far from. I think they're 30th or 31st in this scenario. And then, of course, we have a number 18 draft pick. So it's not the best draft scenario, but at least we were able to finish about 500. I know a lot of fans over the ending of the season were a bit upset about them winning some games because of the draft position, but it's about the integrity of the team in the game and maintaining that culture. So you have guys that want to come back for more playing years, especially when we don't have too much money to spend. So you want to keep guys happy while you can. So that led to ESPN talking about what the biggest offseason priorities are for the Minnesota Vikings, as their top one is to figure out the JJ McCarthy conundrum. He had a mostly brutal first season as a Viking starter, and the team must decide whether to give him another season, acquire a replacement, or pair him with a veteran backup who could take over if he fails to make progress. Now, if any of these are going to happen, I would say the last one is the most likely to happen, just because based on reports we've heard over the course of the season that the Vikings wanted to go get another veteran quarterback in the offseason because it didn't work out with Carson Wentz, and Max Brosmer is not QB2 material. And it sucks to even say that because the kid is likable and he has a lot that you wanted to see work on the field, but just did not translate that way, as he's probably going to be getting cut or something else of a practice squad maybe from Minnesota. I don't know. But as far as bringing in another veteran quarterback for JJ McCarthy, I think that's the smart move, just because he's been dealing with injuries his entire career basically. And you want to make sure that that does not remain a problem. So if you go out, you get a veteran quarterback to not only compete with JJ McCarthy, but also to give him more surety that says, hey, if you get hurt, we don't have to worry about you coming back and being the absolute hero, because we can win a couple of games while you're out hurt, or just if you get benched or things like that. And Minnesota is not going to be in the situation that they were in this season, or in the season where Kirk Cousins got hurt and we literally had a carousel of quarterbacks going through there after that Achilles injury against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau. So definitely the JJ McCarthy is a big one here, and we're going to talk about him a little bit later on here with something that Ben Lieber was saying recently on Cape Fan. But keeping with the Vikings priorities, I think this one as their second priority should be their top priority, and that is to settle the Brian Flores situation. He has been one of the NFL's best defensive coordinators during his 3 seasons in Minnesota, but his contract is expiring and he'll have the opportunity to consider options elsewhere. Even if he doesn't get a head coaching job, it'll be a challenge to replace him with an equal performer, as per Kevin Seifert. And I totally agree with this. When you look at the Vikings defense, I mean, they're maybe 7th overall, I think, by the end of the year. But if their offense was a little bit better and that defense didn't have to do nearly as much, would have been a top 5 defense, absolutely. And absolutely a Super Bowl contending defense, just as they are right now. It's just that the offense could not get up to snuff with them. So that is a big thing there for Minnesota, where Brian Flores, you need to keep him. You need to keep him. You need to convince Harrison Smith to come back for one more year. Getting on him in a second. But Brian Flores, you need to make sure that he can stay there, because you just tell him, hey, head coaching jobs, they're always going to be there. And a lot of the teams that need head coaching jobs right now are the teams that passed on you when you were basically blackballed by the NFL and put on a blacklist for all the things that came out of Miami, and then all those interviews and things like that, the sham interviews, so to speak. And then when you see how it translated to on the field in Minnesota, when Flores was hired, it was a very polarizing decision that a lot of people saw, where it was like, okay, we don't want the drama that he had in Miami or the stuff with the other teams and don't want to cause drama and anything like that. but he took the defensive coordinating job because the head coaching jobs just were not out there. And then he absolutely excelled in it. And he proved to people that he was in the right. He was the one that was right about the situation in Miami, about Stephen Ross and about Tua. And then as well with these other teams where you see how it worked out for them, a lot of those teams that passed on Flores initially or had those sham interviews, they don't have a head coach right now. The Arizona Cardinals are one of those teams. They don't have a coach. The Giants are one of those teams. They don't have a coach. So Flores is definitely counting out those ones just on principle. At least I would. The Jets are another team where I can't believe they kept Aaron Glenn around, but that would have been another appealing choice for him. But of course, you have the Ravens and the Raiders that are now emerging from that. The Raiders were always a threat because they got rid of Pete Carroll as soon as the season ended, and Tom Brady is going to be involved in picking that next head coach. So that is going to be a big thing to watch for him wanting to recreate what he had in New England with Brian Flores as the head coach, and knowing that Brian Flores with the Raiders defense would be terrifying. And then you also have in Baltimore with the surprise firing of John Harbaugh. That opens it up where Flores would go there with one of the best defenses on paper in the NFL, as long as they're healthy. And then Lamar Jackson on offense with Derrick Henry. That would be very insane to see Brian Flores on that team. Now it's a matter of Minnesota just saying, hey, we can make you the highest paid defensive coordinator in the NFL. But as the way it's looking right now, when talking about their contract and the extension with Flores, it is not on the front burner as per Tom Pelissero, saying that he's focused on what potential head coaching opportunities could be out there. Once you get past that, let's see exactly how those other dominoes may fall. So again, we know the Ravens have interviewed Brian Flores. That's something that's been covered. The Ravens have also interviewed Minnesota's passing game defensive coordinator. So that's another option that the Ravens could look at. But of course, with Brian Flores being on the market, you're not really going to get much better options than Brian Flores at that spot. But Minnesota just has to say, hey, listen, head coaching jobs are going to be all popping up all the time, but the Ravens and the Raiders are really good fits. So that's going to be very tough to do, especially when Minnesota does not have a lot of cap space to do it. But with some casualties that might be a result of that, that could open the door for Brian Flores to come back. And we're going to get on that in a second, but keeping it rolling with the other priorities, you get to the Harrison Smith situation as he got the last game treatment in week 18 and subbing out in the final minutes for a home crowd ovation and hugs from teammates. Usually more often than not, that signals a retirement. But if he plays for a 15th season, the chances of a return to Minnesota would be high. He produced at age 36 with 54 tackles, 2 picks, 10 pass deflections, and 1 sack per Jeremy Fowler. And I absolutely agree with that. If Harrison Smith does come back for one more year, it absolutely has to be the Minnesota Vikings because he is a Minnesota Viking for life. He's said it. Other players have said it. But Harrison Smith also saying that last game almost felt like a funeral for him, where he might not have a choice in the matter at this point, because you wouldn't have to want to come back and then have to go through all of that again just to have that be the formal celebration of it. But at the end of the day, too, he never explicitly stated this was going to be his final year. It wasn't like a Ray Lewis situation where people came in, or Adam Thielen, where people came into this season knowing it was going to be their final year. Harrison Smith never definitively said it. It was just kind of left out there for interpretation, and his ex-teammates all ran with it and just kind of had this be a swan song season with them only signing a 1-year contract. But because of the way that the season panned out, I can't help but think that Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell, and if Brian Flores comes back, I think that's a big selling point. If you're trying to get Harrison Smith to come back, that is included in that, and it must be included in that of saying, hey, if Flores comes back, you're poised for a ring at some point. If we can make it going, if we can get the offense clicking like the way it was a little bit towards the end of the year, or just winning games the way we were, that is something where Minnesota could still be a playoff contender. And if you could punch a ticket to the dance, you absolutely have a shot to do it. But sticking with the other predictions for Minnesota's offseason, that's where the ESPN article got a little bit scary and a little bit dicey as we do look at the predictions for the offseason. With little cap space, the Vikings will say goodbye to tight end TJ Hawkinson, which we're about to get to in a second here, who's had hand injury issues and is coming off 2 straight years with fewer than 500 receiving yards. Tied for 33rd among tight end ESPN receiver scores, and through week 17, cutting Hawkinson would save the Vikings nearly $9 million in cap space before June 1st and $16 million if designated after June 1st. And when we look at something that was posted on Twitter as well, there was something of some predictions as far as cut candidates, and Aaron Jones and TJ Hawkinson being the big ones on there. When you see the money that they could save, they are very much in the hole right now. So, I mean, Javon Hargrave, that's not a big saving right there, but he wasn't performing too much this season. Aaron Jones, $1.2 million. 1.2 is 1.2. So that's the way you look at it. And with those injuries, you want him to be playing when you're paying him that much. Ryan Kelly, another example of that. You're going to be saving a lot of money if you get rid of him because of the injuries, and he should probably just retire at this point. I think that's just what's best for his health. Then, of course, TJ Hawkinson. So that is going to be something where the Vikings, as much as we love TJ Hawkinson, We have been kind of expecting him to be gone basically all season. We thought it was going to happen at the trade deadline. I thought it was going to happen because they need a future resolution there. Even Josh Oliver is a really good tight end. Could have done that, but also the tight end 3 and with the Rams, I thought was a really good fit as well with a lot of upside. But sticking with these chances and these potential cut candidates, that is going to take us to what Ben Lieber had to say on K-Fan, saying with some predictions thrown his way as far as who he thinks is going to be back. KOC, 100%. Flores, 40%, which at least there's some percentage there. Just depends on the head coaching landscape. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, 80%. Harrison Smith, only at 2%, which they did say if at some point during the season, maybe if they go on a playoff push, they convince him to come out of retirement for the last couple of games or something like that. CJ Ham, however, he thinks he's done. He's retired. He's not going to go to another team. He's just going to retire. Here, Jordan Addison, 50-50. That is where I thought it was a little bit interesting because Jordan Addison, he's got that fifth year option coming up there where Minnesota has to decide whether they want to pick that up or if they want to let him go. Jordan Addison is an elite talent, but the discipline stuff has been a bit of a problem. However, once he came back from that suspension, he was really good. There was that thing in the overseas, but at least he was going to tour. He wasn't going to cause trouble or anything like that. It wasn't a George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb situation where they were gambling in Vegas or anything like that. But then you also have where Minnesota just has Jordan Addison there. They need to make sure that he can be the guy. It is kind of a George Pickens situation where if we're going to give you this money, we're going to make you one of the highest paid wide receiver 2s in the NFL. We got to make sure that you can stay out of trouble and that you can be producing for us time and time again on this Vikings club. So that is one thing that I thought was a little bit alarming. And then going on with the rest of the chances, McCarthy 100% or 95 if they go for the trade. Hockenson and Aaron Jones at 0. And this is why he said that he doesn't think that they played on that final game just because they didn't want to injure them any further or be on the hook for anything or depreciating their contract or trade value. So that is something where Minnesota, I think that was very alarming, where Aaron Jones seemed like he was pretty okay. And then going through the week and then he just wasn't playing. Could have been like a Max Crosby type situation. I think more so with TJ Hockenson if that's the case. But them wanting to just rest them, make sure that, okay, you guys aren't even at 100% or at 90%. You're not going to play. Want to make sure that we can have you as healthy as possible just so that we can cut you or trade you. And that seems to be what's going to be happening with Minnesota in this spot. And that, of course, takes us to the final part of it, which is the early draft outlook. If Flores isn't hired away as a head coach, he'll want to bolster down the secondary. Ohio State's Caleb Downs is unlikely to last until the late teens, but he would be an ideal pick in a Minkah Fitzpatrick type role. Either Brandon Cease from South Carolina or Colton Hood from Tennessee might be more likely options to fill a need at cornerback. And I definitely think that's where Minnesota is going to go, especially if Harrison Smith retires. You need someone at safety, and their corners are pretty solid. But then you also have Jeff Okudah, who could be cut and things like that. Isaiah Rodgers, we don't know what's going to happen there at some point. Who knows? But then you also have something on offense where they might want to draft a running back. There's options there. But I think Minnesota is going to try and go the trade route with Aaron Jones or try and just get a free agent running back. And then they're going to go and draft defensively, which is something that we probably need. And especially if we want to make sure that this defense, if they are asked to do more than they are capable of or more than they are usually asked to, like they were this year, we can ensure that if they are in that scenario, the wheels aren't going to fall off and they can absolutely make sure to bring that game home for us. But let us know what you guys think down in the comments below as far as everything we covered in this video. Do you think Flores is staying? Do you think he's going? Do you think Harrison Smith is retiring? Do you think that Jordan Addison is going to be let go without that fifth-year option as that 50-50 like Ben Lieber was saying? And what do you think the Vikings are going to do with J.J. McCarthy? Are they going to trade him for an established veteran, or are they going to bring in a veteran guy that is a good backup but can be a reliable starter if needed? Let us know down in the comments below, but that's going to do it for this episode of Vikings Digest. Thank you again to Kalshi for sponsoring this video. I've been your host, Griffin. Take care.